Welcome everybody to the Esports Central Podcast. It is episode 49 and we are so close to the big number 50. This is for the 4th of July 2019, a date that will live in infamy. And I'm quoting the wrong movie right now, but that is the day of independence in America, and it is the day the podcast will come out independently of everything except Esports Central. How's it going, guys?
Good, thank you. It was really hard holding that pose. Holy shit. I thought I'd make it through the whole intro, but I fucked that up the way I fucked up the intro recording 2 weeks ago.
Well done, Kaameel.
Kameel's yet to land like a first attempt at a podcast open. First time he forgot his name. Last
That
week
never happened.
The second time it was like 3 or 4 attempts deep before he like vaguely got it correct.
I don't know what it is.
You finished so well, but it's like your like start is just terrible.
See, for the rest of us, we all start very well and then we finish too soon or badly or whatever. He finishes well, but you know his starts are bad. How's that work?
Are we calling Kaameel like the Benjamin Button of like SA Esports? Then he lives his life in reverse.
Well done,
Dude,
there, Prof.
Laugh, but it's true, dude. That fucking I worked the Rush FIFA Esports event. Dude, I started Friday. I was like, what the fuck is going on in my life? But at the end of it, I was like, yeah, is there more FIFA to be played? I'm ready for this.
See, but you know what you did there? Your issue there is you scared all the viewers away on day 1, and by like day 3, they're like, nah, fuck this shit. And then you're doing your best work, but nobody came back.
Exactly. Because that's how it is. I mean, because I know how all these people think, because I'm the same. I watch a Twitch stream for 1.5 minutes and be like, oh, this guy's fucking trash. And I switch it off. It's like, hey, what can you do? What can you do?
So that's our usual sort of meandering intro. We always talk and we assume everybody knows who we are, because of course you know who we are. It's the Esports Central Podcast. But in case you're wondering, I'm axtremes. With me is Kaameel, Chicktay, and Profeci, Twitter handles on the video. And of course, if you're listening on Spotify or Podbean or iTunes or wherever other places, I mean, we're on like the Nexus Hub website and all sorts of weird things. All sorts of hubs. Anyway, implications.
Don't keep flaming the people that host our podcast, Flam.
I love the Nexus Hub, by the way. They make a good milkshake.
They do, actually.
They really do. But yeah, we're all about opinions on esports, talking about the things that are going on in the scene internationally and locally within South Africa. We thank all of you who've been listening since the very beginning, and we thank all of you new guys who've come in as well. If you want to know more about esports in South Africa, go to www.esportscentral.co.za, where you can see articles from people like us, as well as a whole bunch of other contributors. And if you want to contribute, you're more than welcome to. They'll even pay you to write for it. So definitely give that a shot if you're an esports person. And of course you are, because you're here. So let's move on. Actually, before we move on, the opinions represented in this podcast do not represent the opinions of Esports Central. It's just these shitheads in the podcast who think this.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty.
It's funny that we actually have to make that disclaimer. Like, it's like, oh, Esports Central is such a fucking trash publication. Like, oh, why? Because they write about the events that happen, do interviews with players, all that. No, because those guys are assholes on podcasts. Oh, so the Esports Central podcast is trash, not the publication, my guys.
Yeah, the publication gets you views for your sponsor, which you need to actually justify having your sponsor, because the 100 views on the stream ain't going to do that, but the 20,000 people who read the article...
No, dude.
Yeah.
Sargon and Clint are such bastards for having a publication that it gives exposure to South African esports, because there's so many other people already doing that.
There's lots of people doing it. Of course, the reason why I can say 20,000 people isn't just Esports Central. And I say our because I write for Esports Central as well, but clearly delineated. One's opinion, the other thing is, well, opinion too, because I get paid for opinion pieces. But hey, I'm one of the lucky ones, I guess. But we also our content is also syndicated to Critical Hits, which is the most popular gaming and pop culture movies kind of site in South Africa. So it does mean that there are a lot of hits, and it does mean that the platform is actually bigger than you may think. So yeah, yes, we're freaking amazing, except we're the podcast and we're not the publication. So,
we're
maybe we're not.
Everything's got there has to be balance in the universe. Like you get the good and you get the shit, and we're the shit.
Yeah, you have the shining example of Virtue and Righteousness, which is the website where Sargon writes an investigative piece and gets players played, and guys made whole after 6 months and not getting their money. That's Esports Central, and then you come here and there's Kaameel and he's like talking crap about Dota and everybody's wrecking him and we're just toxic about esports.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can have this great publication that does give exposure to our small scene, or you can come to the podcast and see me and Glenn say fuck you for 2 hours. You know, it's just one of those things. You can decide.
Yeah, that's the great thing. It's all about choice. You don't have to listen to us. Goodbye.
Whatever floats your goat, if you enjoy it, cool.
If you're still here after I said goodbye, thanks for sticking with us. Appreciate it. Jeez, we're terrible. I'm sorry. Thank you for still being here if you are still here. Let's talk about international esports, and I'm going to kick it off talking about Counter-Strike. And why am I going to talk about Counter-Strike? Because last week was the 20th anniversary of Counter-Strike, which is amazing. Last week, Wednesday, and this is, of course, recorded for the 4th of July 2019. So that should tell you something about when. But, oh, you're going to sleep now during the Counter-Strike? Okay, fine.
You guys going to talk about Counter-Strike for the next 30 minutes. What must I do, dude?
Kaameel, I feel that I need to stand in for Glenn here and say, fuck you, Kaameel. Did I do it right?
No way near.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Glenn would be disappointed.
I don't have
sorry.
the lighting either for it. Like,
Yeah, this is
the
true.
lighting
Spotlight.
I'm not sure we're allowed to say that, but
I don't know actually.
anyway, we're going to talk about Counter-Strike, 20th anniversary of Counter-Strike, and what better way to celebrate it than to have casted for 7 hours until the very next day and be half dead. That's what I did on the anniversary of Counter-Strike for ESL Europe. But what I'm actually going with this is ESL and Europe are doing something else which is pretty amazing, and that is ESL 1 Cologne. It's called the Cathedral of Counter-Strike for a reason, because it is the event that everybody is excited about in Counter-Strike. It's not a major anymore, but it doesn't need to be, because all the good teams are there. It is the best arena. It's the best crowd. It is just freaking insane. And it started on the day of recording of this podcast, and I was supposed to be working, but instead I'm sort of doing this and like looking one way and looking at my work because, geez, I got to get this Counter-Strike in. It's exciting. And you guys aren't excited.
No, not at all.
That seems like the perfect thing. I mean, like, I was wondering when you were going to end.
Oh, you were just like, I'm enthusing so much. Will he ever stop?
I'm watching it. What are you talking about?
Oh, is that why you?
I'm just staring at this game. It's great. We just watched Navi somehow throw an unthrowable game off the back of Simple trying to be a gangster and knife somebody. Made a mistake, died. Rest of his team lost a 1v3.
Jeez.
So yeah, I mean,
City.
Yeah, it's all happening right
But this is what's cool about ESL and Cologne. There's always drama. There's always amazing stuff happening. You'll attest to this. Your big tournament in Dota is TI. Shit always goes down, right? So, I mean, whatever your esport is, whether it's Worlds and League of Legends, whatever it is, there's that one stage that everybody looks forward to. And Counter-Strike is ESL 1 Cologne. So if you're into Counter-Strike, make sure you check it out. And the one thing I can say for ESL that's really cool this year, and this is not just because they've heavy to cast occasionally, is that it's not the Facebook exclusivity deal anymore. And that's one thing that I've really enjoyed about watching ESL events this year, is that you can watch on Twitch, on YouTube, on Facebook. So like whatever platform you like and wherever you are in the world, you can probably find a stream that's not going to buffer like a mofo. So I just wish every tournament organizer would start doing that, because, like, hey, it kills my soul when sometimes when I have to watch in 360p on a 50 meg fiber line on Twitch. It's just, I wish everybody would do it.
Yeah. On the point of the exclusivity deal, I know you guys are talking about the Counter-Strike and all of that, but I think what ESL does is, like, it's amazing that now that they give us the option to watch on Facebook and not force us, it's actually amazing. Like, I think it could grow, the Facebook streaming, once the platform gets better. I also think, just like ESL in general, even though they haven't hosted any official DPC events for the Dota as well, they host I would say arguably the best tournaments. That's what the players say, that's what the teams say. The production is always professional, the content is always good, and the tournaments are just fucking great,
I think they've kind of honed it down to a fine art. It's really, it's gone from this thing of, a few years ago, all the players complained about ESL and the various issues they had, but it's kind of an object lesson of, they were the biggest in their market, but they were also pretty shit, and then they listened, and now they're not just the biggest, they're also the best, which some people in our market could also learn from as well. Listen to criticism, that sort of thing. It does help. It's amazing. It really can change things for you. And then talking about the Counter-Strike, I mean, we got Team Liquid, best team in the world right now. Astralis, we've spoken about them on the podcast before, greatest team of all time, who kind of voluntarily let go of that in order to play in the Blast Pro Series events, which is owned by the company that also owns them. Can you say conflict of interest? You can, because I just did. So it's interesting. Are they going to be able to mount a challenge to Liquid? Can they recapture that form? Like, the storylines are, they're there. And also, if Liquid win this, they'll have won the Intel Grand Slam, which was considered impossible, but Astralis did it last year. And now Liquid might actually win it, like, having just won all the tournaments consecutively, which is crazy, because you have to win 4 in the circuit between the Intel Extreme Masters, the ESL tournaments, and the DreamHack tournaments. If you win 4 of them in the season, you win an extra $1 million, which is a crazy amount of money for free. And it was when it was introduced a couple of years ago, everybody said it's impossible. Astralis did it, but Astralis only became the most dominant team in history like halfway into the season. So it became this like crazy feat that they somehow managed to win enough tournaments to actually take it. And like a lot of people saying it never be done again. And then we go over the next year, and just because Astralis sort of bugged out of things, our Team Liquid are on the verge of just doing it in the almost easiest fashion possible, Prof?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've gotten to 3 in, what is it, something like, is it 60 days, 70 days? Whereas Astralis took 194 to complete the whole thing, to give you an indication of how like rapidly Liquid is caught.
It's insane. It really is. And the team looks great, but they still have, to me, I still have the niggling doubts. I don't know why it is. I mean, maybe it's like it was with the Astralis back in the day, where you always think, oh, geez, bit of mental weakness. Maybe they're going to crumble when they face the right opponent. But, you know, we'll see. They pulled it across the line against Team Liquid in the first game. So, well, second game for them in the tournament. So we'll see where they end up. But there's all sorts of storylines. Can Astralis reascend to the throne? Will Liquid hold on to it and win $1 million? Can Na'Vi undo the tilt and actually win something just, you know, with the best player in the world in their team? It is just going to be great. I'm going to watch Counter-Strike the whole week, and I don't even care. That's what I'm doing.
It's going to be glorious. Man. It's going to be absolutely glorious.
Yes, I mean, indeed.
Staying on the CS:GO track, we obviously had the news last week that the Furia contracts, or a Furia contract, whether it was recent or not, was released. We had a follow-up on that. So, I mean, one of the members of Rush B Media, he did an interview with, it was actually Ryan from Rush B Media. He did an interview with apparently one of the owners of Furia, Akari. It's interesting in that if you read it, it's a very good exercising in like saying nothing much, but still talking a lot. Because I think he dodges just about every question of Ryan's and like doesn't really give 100% answer on anything. It's like Ryan at one point asks him like, okay, so like, you know, what are these contracts? Like, no, these like, it was definitely a lie. They were like $1,400 was not the base price, or like not the base salary. It was way higher than that, depending on whether like where they like what rank they were. And like it was 1,400 plus a whole bunch of other stuff depending on. So it's like, no. So it's 1,400 plus something. And then he's like, no, but that's not the base price. Like, no, but that's the very definition of a base. If it starts at a point, it's like...
that is the point.
And yeah, it was just... It's a very, very weird interview. Now, look, it must be said that Akari is Portuguese or speaks Portuguese because he's Brazilian. So there might be a bit that is lost in translation, but it was a very, very odd interview.
And also, just to say there, like the whole controversy around them signing a 5-year contract with these guys, you know, the contract extension, that's just unheard of in sports, not even esports. It's just, that is, in esports, it's like so over the top, because even a year contract in esports, like quick things can change, where you can go from being a shit tier team to being a top 5 team in the world. It can be so quick that if you sign a 2-year contract, you could put yourself in a horrible situation where you're like horribly underpaid versus what you're actually doing, you know? So it's an insane thing that they signed a 5-year extension, especially under the conditions of that contract that came out, the original contract, where they're getting paid. Like, I think By the numbers with Thorin and Richard Lewis, they were saying that what's his name, Lopez had said that his contract 10 years ago in CS 1.6 was better than the Furia contract. 10 years ago, during the financial downturn of 2009, where the world's economy fell through the toilet and esports sucked the hind tit because, what's going to suffer? The thing that nobody understands or cares about is esports. And he had a better contract as a player from Finland, a scene that just wasn't really a thing at that point anymore. It was earlier in 1.6, but by 2009, not so much. So, I mean, okay, he was playing an international team, but still, it's just, it blows the mind, Prof.
It is crazy. Now, look, the one thing I will say is that apparently, like, they've signed this long contract, and they needed to sign this long contract to get hold of a sponsorship, and it turns out that sponsorship is with Nike.
So, that's where it just gets wild.
This is like,
what?
Okay, I mean, like, Nike. So like, I don't know who's doing what deals here, but Furia somehow is the fucking first org in CSGO that is sponsored by Nike.
So it's official. They got the Nike sponsor, or they're getting a Nike sponsor.
No, it was announced.
Woo!
Sponsored by Nike or some shit. Like, I don't know. Like, it's like, it's like being sponsored by Nike and like being sponsored by Nike. There's two different things. So, like, but it is quite wild. So I mean, major props to them for that. But like, that is still like, that interview like just says absolutely nothing.
But also, doesn't he claim that he has like Ronaldo, the actual soccer players involved in like in his org?
R9, yeah, like the old Ronaldo, like for those that know, like R9, so not Cristiano Ronaldo, the older Brazilian player. Like, yeah, he's like, no, they got contacts with this guy, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? It's like one of the weirdest
I love esports
interviews you'll ever see. Like, and like I said, it's like it is translated, so it's been like it was originally done in Portuguese and now it's in English. So like maybe there's something missing, but it is such a mind trip going through some of the things that guy
It's
says.
really long as well. It's just I would encourage anybody who has the mental fortitude, go and read it. It's kind of right up there with that interview from what's that guy's name from Blast Pro Series that was on HLTV? Was it Roberto Puig or something? I don't remember what it was, but there was that mind-bending interview where we basically admitted to all the conflict of interest things while trying to tell everybody that it's good for you. After all, we spoke about it on the podcast.
That was like one of the owners of Blast Pro Series, though.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of right up there with that level of madness. So go give it a read and have a good chuckle. Hopefully, for the Furia guys, I mean, they're young players. Hopefully, their careers are actually in safe hands and they're not just being taken advantage of. But I kind of suspect it might be the latter, Nike or not. I mean, hey, remember they make their shoes in sweatshops. Do you think they really care about it? 5 Brazilian kids? Doubt it.
Yeah,
nope.
Okay, so Kaameel, tell us about the kids that we should care about when it comes to Dota.
So in Dota, there's a select few kids that they don't just get cared about. They're loved by their parents. They spoiled. They get all the gifts. They have the best grandparents that spoil them. They have everything, and those people are the people that go to the international. And the International 9 has broken its own record of the highest prize pool in esports history at now $25 million, right? Community-funded prize pool, of course, people buying compendium, people buying hats, and that's how TI gets funded. Now, this year, it's at $25 million, and there's still a month to go before TI. There's still an extra Immortal Treasure 3 to come out. There's still more content coming out. So it's very likely we're going to crack that 30 million mark, which is good for the optics of Dota 2 because we're going to beat Fortnite's fucking attempt of throwing TI off the top with a 30 million World Cup. And I think we will crack 30 million. But also at the same time, does it even fucking matter anymore if we have this much money in Dota, right? If you have the same fucking problems we've been having for years now in Dota. You have TI and you have some people making the maddest bank ever when you have other people who just missed TI this close, not that far off the top. They could survive for like maybe 2 months. They qualify for a major and they're a big deal. And those guys don't even eat bread. Like, I'm not even talking about like a whole loaf of bread. I mean, like one slice of bread they can't afford because nobody gives a fuck about them, right? This problem has been spoken about a lot in Dota, that you have this super top heavy situation. So yes, I tweeted about TI9 breaking 25 million prize pool, and everybody's like, "Oh, look at Dota, it's so big." But you're never dealing with the actual issue in the game, right? Like that the bottom is never supported, and it's super top heavy. So I don't know, man. I'm not excited about $25 million. I expected it. There's also Knoxville made a claim during one of Trenton Zayori's podcasts, and he's like, so if there's only $27 million in the TI prize pool, what stops Valve from putting down $3 million and $3.5 million to make it $30.5 million prize pool? There's nobody monitoring this shit and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. These numbers don't fucking impress me, Prof.
I mean, the problem is like, like the human brain can only like really comprehend a number up to a certain point. After that, it just becomes a number. Like
Massive.
$30 million. Like, sure, like I can tell you $30 million, but like your brain has no real concept of that kind of cash. So while it's a fantastic number to like, put up in headlights, it's like at the end of the day, I mean, as you point out, like that's not going to save the scene, which unfortunately is becoming like massively top heavy. It's almost like a form of exclusivity all by itself, except to be exclusive, like you have to be like it's literally like you had to be good for like the last 2 years, and then it's like everybody else just sort of falls away because they just can't sustain it for long enough. They just can't pay the bills to get into the top level. So the guys that are in the top level stay there, and like there's very little turnover on like whole teams of new players.
I mean, Ax, let me give you a good example of this, right? There's a team called, obviously the Alliance historically were one of the greatest Dota teams of all time, and they were the winners of the International 3, right? So the Alliance org is like a massive org, okay? Today, like, they were the 12th team now to qualify for the DPC and for TI as number 12 spot in the Dota C DPC. This team formed like 18 months ago, right? They took a whole bunch of like tier 2 and tier 3. I don't even know. They weren't even tier 2 players, like tier 3 players, young players nobody's ever heard about. And they gave them the situation where they could play. They had gaming houses, they had org support, they had people like feeding them and shit. And they were shit, and they were shit, and they were shit, and they were shit, and they were shit. But after a while, they got better, right? They started competing in events. They started making finals. They started qualifying. They started qualifying for TI now, right? But this team had 18 months of support, even while failing. I know this year it hasn't been like 18 months of failing. Like this year it's been much better, but like still for a team to last for one year in Dota while losing is unheard of. No other tier 2 team. The tier 2 teams that are way better than them actually competing at events are gone now, because the minute you stop qualifying for events, you broke back mountain, homie. You fucked.
I'm not sure that really worked, but I get your points. It is just an endemic thing in Dota, as you say. The anything below the very best teams, well, there just isn't the floor for them to stand on. The legs are dangling in outer space just about, and you can float off into oblivion if your results don't go the right way. So it is amazing that Alliance stuck with them and kept them going. But of course, that's an outlier. It's actually the exception that proves the rule. So
yeah,
it's a crazy one, man. Also, crazy thing. I forgot to mention we have a guest on tonight's show. He's coming up a little bit later. That is Anthrax from Metal State. That's going to be super cool to talk to him because, of course, they just had Rush and the WSG qualifiers there. You were casting FIFA, as you mentioned, on the top of the show. And I forgot to put 2 and 2 together and actually say Anthrax is coming up. So definitely look out for that later in the show, guys. Stick with us until then. Of course, we anticipate that it's going to be a lengthy one, so we probably need to get through the rest of the topics double time, guys?
Okay, yeah. So let me stop ranting about Dota.
Yeah, stop
This
it.
is the last thing I'll say. Dota has problems that should be non-existent, right? If there's $25 million invested in the Dota 2 prize pool now, that means there was $125 million in Valve's pocket just from people buying hats. That means Valve could take any small percentage of that shit and just trickle it fucking down, man. And we find Dota doesn't have any real problems, but if it gets left, we will have very real problems. That's it. Done. Finished. Fuck Dota. Fuck Valve. New topic.
Okay. So let's move over to South African esports, and let's start with you, Prof. We just mentioned Anthrax being on the show just after this, talking about the WSG qualifiers at Rush. So what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was it? It was 4 games originally, but only 3 of them are actually rush qualified events. So it's CS:GO, it's Dota.
For
It was
WSG
supposed to be Hearthstone, yeah, for WSG. So
and StarCraft.
basically, the original 4 games were all supposed to have like a trip to Shanghai included if you won. But Hearthstone was apparently at the last minute that was changed, and like Hearthstone was dropped by WSG. So it was only the CS:GO, the Dota, and the StarCraft 2 that included trips to Shanghai. Hearthstone sort of like, as far as I know, Barry and them had to, magic up a little bit of a prize tournament, like a prize pool before the event. So CS:GO won by Energy Esports over Goliath Gaming in the final. It's the second time they've beaten Goliath in recent times. So they look to be probably the best team in SA. In Dota, we've got Kaameel. Well, actually, the better version of Kaameel, Tamir, his little brother. He and his team, late entries because XD couldn't make it to the event. Their Energy Esports team happened to win the prize going to Shanghai. So, Kaameel, how does it feel that your little brother is going overseas before you are?
Dude, I'm so happy, dude. And coming into the event, obviously they had that big drama in the qualifiers where his PC didn't boot and stuff, and White Driver Gaming forced the forfeit on them, and then they lost the next game, so they got eliminated from the qualifiers. It was really lucky that XD pulled out and WSG wanted to field them there, so Barry needed a team, so they played there, right? But massive props to them, man. They looked a bit shaky on day 1 against Goliath, but they won 2-0, and against Sin 5, the favorites in the finals, like Frank, my brother said you don't think he's ever played like him and a team has played such clean Dota ever, and they clearly 2-0'd them. It was really impressive.
Well done to them. Also for the StarCraft, it was Drager who made it through, and I mean he went last year, Goliath Gaming player.
I think Drager's won everything in StarCraft 2 for like the last 5 years. The man is just
so they should just like auto birth him, eh? I mean that's like
like Drager's entered. Okay, guys.
Oh yeah, it's done. Go home, pack up. It's kind of that sort of vibe. Now, the CS:GO, to come back to that, I mean, I watched a bit of that. Of course I did, because it's CS:GO. What's interesting to me about that Energy side is just, again, how young those players are. It's just like a bunch of, guys who sub 20 years old. I mean, I think maybe, yeah, Dweezil and
Blaze are the only
are over 20. So,
yeah.
I mean, we are talking a very young group of players, and it warms the cockles of this old heart that a team of young players is actually succeeding in South Africa, and it hasn't had to include the journeymen who've been around forever, the guys who kind of are the gatekeepers of the scene. And I don't mean it's a bad thing that those guys are there, but you do need to sometimes have the next generation come up, and it's always been kind of a team with like 1 or 2 of these experienced players. You'd have Detriny there, Black Poison there, and that's been cool to bring more guys up. But for a team of only young players to actually be beating all those other guys, and this is the second big tournament they won, because the first one was the StarLadder Asia Minor qualifier to actually go and play at the Asia Minor, which happens before the CS:GO Major in Berlin. So they're going to Berlin this month, which is insane to think. And then early next year, they'll be going to China, which is, I mean, and it's a group of young players. None of the experienced older hands guiding them. They're just doing their thing, which, I mean, wow, well done to them. I'm super impressed.
And yeah. I mean, major props to Energy as well. Somehow just
how do they do it?
These championship, I don't know. Lose your entire championship team end of last year. Just make a new one. Don't stress, boys.
Unexpectedly win the VS Gaming Championships, having won everything the years before with a different team. And then it's a different team that wins it, and then you come to this year and it's a different team again and they win it. It's like, what?
Yeah, they see just like, I don't know. They just seem to have the magic touch at the moment.
It does.
It's ridiculous. And you know how they fielded their Dota team, right? Is that so? Prior to the qualifiers, Chelsea messaged Cassie's like, "Yo, we have a good chance to win this event, man. You wanna sign us up?" And he's like, yeah, sure. Then they lose in the qualifier. So Chelsea and Cass avoided speaking to each other. It's like, okay, this is a yikes. We just pretend nothing ever happened. Then after they got in to the event and they got another chance to play on the LAN, it was like, Chelsea was like, yo, Cass, you want to sign us? And he's like, yeah, jump in, bro. You good to go.
That is a canny businessman right there. He's like, yep.
Funny, dude. Cass is a god like that. But it's funny
on
that
the winning bandwagon.
that the CSGO, like, obviously I think it's great that the 5 new players won it, right? Because we always see that, like, circle jerk of the same guys still there doing their thing. Like, you know what? So it's good to see young guys come in. But the Dota side is opposite. Like, other than TKC and Frank, obviously Frank, brilliant player, previously 8K MMR player. It's like all journeymen. It's like Chosen One, Chelsea, Strike. Like, these guys have been, like, Darren has been playing Dota for like 50 years, it feels like. And now this is the first time they actually won something, was this tournament. So it's pretty cool that the opposite ends of the spectrum, both in energy esports.
It's crazy.
I mean, the one thing that I think we should mention is that like, it's not like the energy team, the CSGO team, is like, they're young, but they're not inexperienced. I mean, obviously Miston was on the all conquering energy team of last year. Dweezil was on the team that won the
VS Masters.
The VS Masters Championships at Comic-Con last year. So it's like, 2 of those players, I mean, on different energy teams, obviously have won a number of events. But it's like, what's encouraging to see is that it's the youngsters that are carrying that team by and large. ADM had an absolutely monstrous tournament. Miston came alive in the final, and who's the other young player now? Raid also. I mean, last game of the final, he went absolutely nuts. And I mean, he at times looked like he was still a bit shaken. He's very, very young from what I understand. I think he's about 16 or something. So
I don't actually know. So talking about those names, ADM, I've actually done an interview with ADM, which will be coming out later this week on Esports Central. Get a different voice. And I mean, for me, he's the player of the tournaments. Had some amazing plays. Definitely go check out the highlights clip. Goals and lighters absolutely lose their mind at the 3v1 after a 4v1 with 1 HP on Mirage against Sinister 5. Unbelievable stuff. And I mean, this is also a kid who was mentored by Black Poison, so still the influence of the journeyman has come through. They've helped those guys get there. So I mean, don't get me wrong, wasn't saying that they did this all in isolation, but it's now on their own. They did it, and we got the young guys on the CSGO side, and as you said, on the Dota side, the journeyman, all energy esports, only winning.
Yeah.
Don't really get it, but there it is. Okay,
right.
so the next thing we need to actually talk about is an infamous article, and I just love the face palm thing there, because it's famous and it's infamous and it's for all the wrong reasons.
I mean, you'd think one of us had written this article, given
the
general reaction to it. But yeah, I mean, released by Glitched. I mean, posted by Glitched. I don't know. It was an article ostensibly about Rush and Geekfest that had combined this year into a single event. It had a very, very weird vibe on the whole article. It came across as, I mean, I think the esports term is like salty. And I mean, there was especially that passage where they referred to like a bunch of players, like they referred to players in a certain way that like,
let me just quote it.
I think you should quote it.
Let me quote it. Of course, it is not an esports event without the players walking around like they own the place. You can just spot them in the crowd as they walk through and expect the world to move aside and bow to them. They're kind of like the quote-unquote big traps guys minus the traps. Most of them are followed by their posse, including a girlfriend who lives for the fact that she dates an esports player. She basically swings from his arm the whole day. Then they put an editor's note like, oh, this was satire and whatever because they got shat on it for making such a fucking inflammatory claim. Now, Prof, I'm just going to fucking take over from where you were saying, yeah? Okay? Firstly, if you want a person of esport players, just call them trash. Like, it's so easy. You don't have to be such an ass about it, okay?
You don't have to be subtle, because the thing is, they tend not to pick up on the subtlety either. If you're trying to be satirical, you could just, you say.
So now this piece I actually thought was a very good piece. Like, it makes great points about both Rush and Geekfest from an event's point of view. I really liked it. But I just want to respond to this part before I get into the rest of the article. Like, I think Marco Coco Mouse is the guy who wrote it, and he was the guy who pushed last year against the Sunday Times article that stereotyped gamers, they call cosplayers fat and slut shaming and all that shit. So, like, you a guy who fights against the stereotypes and all this kind of bullshit, and then you go and perpetuate a whole new one. Nobody even fucking knows us esports people exist, firstly. And I'm sorry if we do have a bad rep or whatever, but come on, man. I told my mom about this line, and she was like, "Oh, you mean all those nerdy guys? You said that about them?" I was like, "It's like what?" And I was like, "Exactly, man. It's a bit fucking ridiculous." So that's my rant about that. Like, come on, man. Why would you go and perpetuate a new stereotype after you've worked to fight against this shit, right? So that's your fucking business.
Like I said, it just came across as like very, very salty. Like, somebody had like some esports person had clearly done something to him that he didn't like. Now, I mean, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's even true. It just like it came across that way because it really did seem rather mean spirited, and it sort of detracted from many of the points that he had in his articles. Because you read that and you're just like, well, I mean, if this is what his actual opinion is, maybe this is like exactly why he's criticizing everything else.
Yeah, that's fair actually.
But I think, as you said, Kaameel, like some of the other points that are made in the article are really good. So it seems maybe it's intentionally inflammatory. I mean, I know they put the disclaimer and say it was intended satire, and we're sorry you didn't take.
Do that. Like,
yeah, no, I mean,
I also
that's it exactly. Like after the fact, if you're going to leave something like that in, you're going to be aware that people are going to react to it. So I almost wonder if it wasn't just there so that people would react to it, because like clearly everybody did. When you pointed that article out to us before people started reacting to it, I said to you, people are going to react to this because esports people, we talk trash about our scene. Fuck you, you don't get to come and talk trash to us about our scene.
Exactly.
That's how it works.
So fucking true. And yeah, I think that's a good point, because I mean, I could just look at perfect example, right? I did a whole quote unquote drama video about the VS Gaming casting situation. 140 views on my YouTube channel. I do a interview a pro player that's competed overseas in the FIFA scene. It's like 30 views. I was like, what?
Yeah, what? I was number 30 because it was at 29.
So maybe this guy's a smart motherfucker, and he's just like, you know what? I know how these esports people function. I'm gonna put some inflammatory fucking thing, and they're gonna like it, because when this article initially came out, nobody gave a shit about it. Then people started retweeting, oh, this guy's saying this, or this guy's saying that. Now it's blown up. So maybe it was a smart decision from a journalist's point of view.
I mean, it doesn't get his points across because nobody cares about his points.
Yeah, I actually want to still talk about his points. Because I think even though he was being an asshole, yeah, I think his points are good, right? His one point about the Fortnite stand was like, it was a lot smaller than last year. It did just look like a by the way thing. And it kind of like, okay, I don't know, I wasn't there, so I didn't see how it happened because I was on a complete opposite side working at FIFA. But like last year, I know that was like, I think Sam Plays and Grant Hines hosted, and I'm not trying to blame the host there. It was very cool. They like brought such big energy there, right? They made it hype. It was like very open. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of interaction. It was fucking amazing, right? So as this guy points out in the article, and not to flame the people who worked this Fortnite event, I think they kind of agreed at the point. I saw Gareth Woods agreeing, and Gareth Woods is a great host himself. Another point he made was that like the events were like made separate. Even the people at the ticket counters were like, you buying a ticket to which event? But your ticket was for both of the events. So why are you doing that? My mother didn't know. Why does it even matter? Yeah, my mother didn't even know she could go into Geekfest. She was like, yeah, I wanted to go check all that stuff, but I didn't have a ticket. I was like, what? You had a ticket? She's like, oh, I didn't know. I was
way
like,
confusing.
Man, that's a fucking mess up, because this is such a good opportunity. Because like he says, that these two events getting combined is a good thing, because Rush is a skeleton event, right? It's not enough to sustain itself. But the Geekfest being there as well gets so many feet through the door, and then you can make that connection from left to right. But there was nothing there to sort of put the scenes together, right?
The kind of like stage, the Comic-Con thing again, eh? Where you got these weirdly unconnected things that are somehow slapped next to each other.
Which is what our homie says in the articles. Like, why are you doing the stuff together if you're not making any attempt to bring the stuff together? So
like integrate them in a smart way.
Exactly,
make sure that like there's people crossing over. Oh, there's this esports thing. I came for the cosplay, but actually this is pretty entertaining. Or I came here for the esports, and holy crap, those are robots fighting. Wow.
Yeah, like exactly, and he gave a good example of like that could have solved two issues for the event. The Geekfest didn't have enough space, which he points out, and there was a stage for the cosplay, right? That was a nice big stage, but like it was so like right at the back. It wasn't a big stage because the big stage was in front for the esports thing. So why just not scrap the stage, put something else there for the cosplay and for the Geekfest stuff, and then you put the cosplay guys right in front on the main stage, the massive stage with this crowd, stadiums, have the announcers there. There's the big speaker thing. Like have joint events there, you connecting the communities, so I think the points were good actually by my homie. or the
Well,
homie?
I mean, Marco Kaameel is the guy who wrote it, and I've seen him at a lot of events. I mean, I've seen him at various product launches. I mean, he goes to those sorts of things for the tech side, not just the gaming side. And he's been around in the scene for a really long time. He's a cool guy. I've met him at the Game Nation gaming forums and MSI launches and all sorts of things. And generally, I think he's a pretty respected journalist, and I think he's a pretty cool guy from my interactions with him. So, I'm speculating like as to maybe why he would have put it in or not. I don't know. We don't know. But maybe it was poor judgment. Maybe it was very well calculated journalistic nous. I mean, I don't know how to put it. But either way, it got the esports community riled up. And the amazing thing about the esports community is they get angry for absolutely nothing. So if you put something this substantial in front of them, they're going to get really angry. So it's just how it is, unfortunately. Small insular community, drop a flame in there and fuck. Shit is gonna burn. It's just that's all that's gonna happen.
And if anybody wants to say that he met a bad esports personality, then he could have met me at Rush. I'm just gonna have you know, I'm not such an asshole all the time. In person, I'm quite a nice person to talk to.
Only an asshole 90% of the time.
Yeah. When I come home and I be like, oh fuck that guy, I'm gonna go on a podcast and flame him. It's like most of the
but
time.
Also,
I'm nice.
I do enjoy the fact that he said that these esports players with their girlfriends, and then there's like more than half of them are like girlfriends.
I mean, imagine that he's flaming the esports players and their girlfriends. He's a double bird. I think I don't know, dude. That's fucking wild, dude.
Well, either way, he got everyone's attention. So yeah, let us know what you guys think. By the way, let's sound off in the comments. Let us know on Twitter. That would be interesting to know. Before we bring on Anthrax, actually, one final thing, but we probably will touch on it with Anthrax as well. We got the VS Gaming CSGO Masters LAN coming up this weekend. No, you're not watching a rerun of last week's episode because there is actually another CSGO LAN happening this weekend, which is blowing my mind because we had one, then we had Rush, then we had another. And of course, the Kasi Tech Fest was happening at the same time as Rush. There was supposed to be a VS Masters Dota tournament the week before the last CSGO one. So it's like so much going on, and I mean, some MGOs are complaining on Twitter about it being too expensive to go to all these things, and I do think they have a good point in that sense. It does seem a little bit crazy, and it's almost as if these tournament organizers don't talk to each other, because what the hell? I mean, I don't understand, because like to ask people to be like players to be at all these things, I understand it's cool and everything, and I understand other things have come up, but yeah, it's just the optics of it are like the whole year of nothing and then everything, and by the way, you need to pay to get there. And of course, it's optional. You don't have to, but if you're a serious team, you're going to try and go there, right? So
yeah.
It has to work both ways, right? Work for the TO, work for the players. Like middle ground, that's where it's at home.
Yeah, absolutely. It just seems a little bit too much. And also, what's interesting to me is Goliath Gaming won the last CSGO one in that sort of depleted field of 7 where they didn't really face anybody particularly good except for Good Gaming, because it's in the name, Good Gaming. But yeah, but they're going to play in the one this weekend, which I don't understand why, because there's 4 qualifier spots for Masters. So what, do they knock somebody else out who then doesn't get the spots, or
the spot will travel down? They can't win the same spot twice, by my understanding. I still think it's DGC. There's prize money. There's 16 teams. This is the hype event, right?
So then what was the point of the other one? It's just
there was no point of it. That's the whole fucking point. That's why we were all like, why is this happening? Why are you hiring talent? Why are you fucking having production? Why is
it caused all this controversy about the casters and everything you guys spoke about on the podcast last week, and it actually did, like, it's such a small thing, it didn't matter. They could have just made 5 spots available for this one, had one event, not forced guys to go to 2.
Big brain extremes.
I mean, sure. Like, this is why they don't pay me the big bucks for this, but pay me the big bucks elsewhere. So, it's that big old brain.
I mean, look, like, to take a different spin on it, it is like 2 events. So, in that respect, yeah, I mean, VS is giving more opportunities for teams to get there, but it does just seem like at times that, like, perhaps the one that they had at first should have been the later one, as in you have the big event first. You have the big event with all like the big teams, and then like the secondary event is the one where
last chance qualifier.
Yeah, the last chance qualifier. That I think would have worked better personally, but
that's really
as it is, VS are going to be running another event. So, I mean, you can't complain about that. We do have more events. It's what we've always been asking for.
It's great, but you know what they will say about this is that we did what the community asked. They wanted more LAN events, so we gave them that, and now they're moaning at us.
In their defense, that's what the community asked. Like, no LANs.
But you also need to look at it and go like, let's look at it logically. Is this possible for people to come to? In an ideal world, what would have happened is 30% of the teams in South Africa would have gone to the first one, and the other 70% would have gone to the other one, because that's kind of the ratio between 1 spot and 4 spots. But if you're not going to offer the prize pool at the first one, then they're not going to go to it, because like logically, if we're going to spend money to travel to a tournament, we're going to go to the one where we at least have a chance to make some money. So it's unfortunate, because again, I can see they're going to say like, we did what the community wanted, and fair enough, you did. So props for doing that. But unfortunately, it's kind of backfired. And of course, you guys didn't talk about it, because I like talking about broadcasting. It was horrible in terms of production quality. And I really hope the one this weekend will be better.
Doubt it.
Yeah. Anyway, let's. I'm still gonna watch it anyway. You're gonna watch it anyway, Shaun. This is what's gonna happen. We're interested in CS:GO, so we'll watch it. But you know, when you have something like WSG at Rush being run by Metal State, who have a consistently high production quality, and then you watch a VS event, it's kind of a letdown. Especially, you'll see the same casters, but you'll see them centered beautifully on camera on Metal State. You know, right there in the frame. And on the VS thing, they're sort of over here with an overlay over the one guy's head that you can't see him. You know, that's the difference we're talking about. So it's
VS production used to be pretty good. Like, maybe I didn't know about the stuff at the time, but like I felt like in EGE Masters and stuff, I thought the production was like pretty solid. The way they had their panel, the way they had the cameras for the casters and stuff, that's pretty good. So I feel like it's really a big step backwards, but I don't know.
It
Maybe
would
that's
depend
just
on
me.
their production house that's advising them, unfortunately.
the people involved. Yeah, it's a shame, but I mean, still, like the props to VS Gaming really have to be that they are probably the lifeblood of esports in South Africa. They keep all these titles alive. So I mean, we need them involved. I just wish that you know, things in that sense turned out a little bit better and did a little bit more justice to some of the players involved, because you know, they're spending a shit ton of money on these prize pools and 600,000 rand and everything. But it would just be great if it was a little nicer to watch.
Yeah.
And
That's
you
fair.
knew about it. That'd be nice too.
Man, just one 15-year-old with Twitter on their phone, man. That's all you need, VS Gaming.
And now we put a full stop under this. After next week's VS Gaming thing, if there's nothing different about the production, I may not even mention it, because I'm friggin' tired of that subject too. Meanwhile, talking about tired, Shaun looks like he's falling asleep over there, so we better get Anthrax and get this party on the road.
Anthrax will bring me to life.
Okay.
Go.
Magic! And so we were mentioning our extra special, super special, exceedingly special. I'm just going to keep saying special because, you know, it has all sorts of connotations. But in this sense,
special?
Yeah, in this sense, I really mean he's a cool guy. He's Anthrax. He's our guest. Special.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going great, dude. Awesome to have you.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
No see.
I'm actually.
It has been a while.
Jeez, yeah, actually, now that you mention it, I think I saw you at the event whose name will not be mentioned for fear of people who haven't been paid. That's been a while ago.
Listen, let's be honest. It seems to be like a stock standard thing. If you're a TO or anybody paying talent, it's a thing about not paying people, right?
Yeah, it does seem to be a bit endemic. Shout out to South African esports sponsors. Yeah,
I just walked away event 2 days ago for Barry, and I still fucking haven't been paid.
What the
Barry,
fuck, Barry?
Come on, dude.
Completely unacceptable.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
You know, it takes a fly only 2 hours to digest its food, and now I still haven't been paid.
It was something that like Sam Tech Girl posted today, also on Twitter. That was like there was like some other guy that like has nothing to do with esports, also complaining like this is. BS.
It was
like,
really Clubby from 702. I don't think she's still on 702, but she's like a public speaker or something.
Yeah, and she was also like getting stiffed. So it's just like it just seems to be a universal problem across every single.
I think it's in entertainment, right? If you go back and have a look at there's probably stories if you had to like really do one of those like investigative journalist reporting into entertainment and media people not being paid for what they do. I'm sure you can find anybody that'll tell you that it took them forever to get paid, or somebody didn't get paid somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I think it's endemic. It's just it's a humans versus other humans thing. It happens in pretty much every industry. In my industry outside of esports, same thing. It's just how it is. And sometimes I'm the one not paying people. Hey, that's
it doesn't make it right. I suppose it's just dependent. I mean, there's so many variables at the end of the day, especially in like entertainment, where in esports particularly, where you're in South Africa, right? And we're trying to grow this industry, and nobody's going to just drop money and give you 2 million rand up front. Hell, they're not even going to give you 200,000 rand up front. They kind of want to see that you can do what you say you're going to do, and then they'll pay you on their 30-day terms. And then on top of that, it's other stuff, reporting and all of that. And, like I said to Kaameel over the weekend, Middle States is, there might be people out there that say that we still owe their money, but, if you don't follow up with an email, or hell, anybody that works with Middle State has my number, message me and go, hey, B, haven't been paid, what's going on? Then, I mean, I can't know everything. We're still a growing company. As we go along, we'll figure out ways to get procedures and processes and procedures in place like big corporate companies, so that we can delay paying people even longer. But I think it's just, figuring out how things have to be done.
Absolutely. I think just for people who may not know who Anthrax is, I was going to introduce him, but I got stuck on calling him Special, so sorry for that. But Anthrax from Metal State, owner of Metal State, MD, CEO, COO, Chief Emotions
CTO.
Officer, all of those things. He's the head honcho at Metal State, also very prolific CSGO caster, and if we go back, Battlefield 5 caster and world champion, right?
World champion.
Battlefield 3, sorry. Battlefield 3.
Battlefield 3, yeah.
Yes.
And ESL Nations Cup winner.
Look at that.
Back when it was still cool to win things.
Yeah, and other people who win things are just posers and,
No, now when you win things, you don't get paid.
No, this is true. Depending on what it was, of course,
Yeah, for sure.
But
now
this weekend has been paid, or will be paid.
Some additional context, because of course, I mean, we're talking about what we know, but people might listen to this or watch this at a different point in time. So this is right after Rush at the Times Square Arena in Pretoria, South Africa, and that was I don't even know what the date is. It's the last weekend of June 2019, basically. And you guys held the WSG qualifiers for South Africa, the finals of those, semi-finals and finals for a few different games. You had Hearthstone tournament, you had FIFA as well. So a very, very big production. Lots of things going on for you guys. It must have been quite something to pull off, eh?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. There was a mild case of anxiety when I was going into it. There's a lot of things. What was great was that we were only doing the broadcast for WSG. Initially, they wanted to do FIFA, but we kind of decided against it. There's obviously other things at play, royalties, copyright, licensing, all of that kind of stuff. So kind of rather steer clear of that and just kind of run a FIFA tournament, which Kaameel actually casted. But it was like, there was a lot of stuff going on all at the same time. And, in South Africa, you have this very small community of people. So, and you have very limited capacity, like jobs for casters and limited budget. So, in an ideal world, you want 3 casting pairs. You want people to come in and have I've been overseas and seen all of these things in action. And, we all know it goes without saying that, the ultimate dream is to have multiple casters, multiple casting pairs, and time is just of the essence, because in South Africa, people are working on Fridays. We don't have these esports lives where, this is just what we do. So we kind of work in between our real lives and gaming. And on Thursday, I also, to add little pressure to everything, I lost my car keys and couldn't find them. Still haven't found them. Had my car towed at 12 o'clock at night on Thursday because I didn't want to leave my car key with the car keys somewhere. Hey, guy, here's a free car. and that was towed off. And I don't have my car. I'm only going to get it back in the key for it in 8 days. So there was some interesting stuff, but as much as the pressure is, there were so many people that helped, that got involved. Kaameel was an absolute rock star on the stand as a caster and as a host of that stand. There was some Bravado guys and some Goliath guys. All of the FIFA guys were they banded together and just helped. I say helped, but they kind of told us what they wanted, and we listened, and we kind of changed in mid-tournament the actual tournament structure of FIFA so that it was better for everyone. And then, like, my brother-in-law, who is basically a chef, has not done any kind of adminning. I said to him, right, this is your FIFA stand, and I want you to make sure that all these games happen. And, I mean, Kaameel will tell you, the guy was an absolute warrior.
Yeah, he was. Adminning a FIFA event is not easy. I've worked FIFA events before as admin, and Justin did a phenomenal job.
Didn't he just come off a stint on a yacht as well? Like, how long
did.
ago did he come back?
He's literally been back for like 2 weeks. So, I mean, and then we go on to WSG. We had guys, I mean, Demonic doing things. We've just got Scar helping us. Ali's significant other, she's joined Metal State, and she's helping us from that perspective. We had Garrett Woods there on the Fortnite stand that shall not be mentioned. We had, casters, all the guys. I mean, Snare was doing a great job. Ash and Lighters doing a good job there. For me, it was the first time I wasn't actually involved in, or felt that I needed to be involved as a caster or a host, because I didn't have enough people to do what needed to be done, where I could just kind of move between the three different places and do what needed to be done. At some points, I was just under tables fixing HDMI, don't say HDMI, DisplayPort cables that had come out, or someone needed water, or getting food, because you got to feed people.
Yep.
So, yeah, but I mean, we pulled it off, and I don't think it went off too badly. Our broadcast was okay. And again, I sat down with the whole team today, and I said, tell me, I don't want to hear how well we did. I want to hear everything that we did wrong. And, people think that I'm afraid of, or, you can't shit talk Metal State. You can't shit talk Anthrax. It's like, how am I supposed to fix something if I don't know if it's wrong? If I don't know something's not right, tell me. The whole HLTV thing, pure assumption on my part, because when I first spoke to HLTV, what was it? Yo, dude, years ago, it was for a 10,000 Rand winner take all, let's do this kind of thing. And it was like, back then, that was when the dollar was like 478 Rand to the dollar or something ridiculous. The guys, and he was frank with me, he said, and that was a while ago, HLTV have obviously changed their policies and stuff like that. And he just said, it's not worth our while putting like a $300 or $400, competition on HLTV. And when this whole thing happened with WSG and we did it, I was like, okay, well, 10,000 Rand, went to the little calculator thing, $700. I'm like who's going to look at that? But, I suppose I made a mistake, and next time it won't happen again. That's all I can say.
I mean, the thing is, like, HLTV, I think, has also
this is for the CSGO, by the way, just in case anybody's not a CSGO person. It's the site where you find games tend to be indexed, where you if you want to see what CSGO am I going to watch tonight, go to HLTV, and that's the repository of information.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like, I do think that like HLTV has changed their policies over the years, and it's like it's not always well known unless you're like in constant communication with them, because there have been previous like where it's like X tournament has a bad rep and they don't want to work with them anymore, and that sort of like affects everybody in the scene, because they're sort of like, okay, you're in that scene's small enough that tournament is like big enough to affect everybody, so we're not getting involved there.
Yeah, sucker-winess because of what somebody else did.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all based on assumption as well. Like I said, mistakes were made, and I take full responsibility for that. And maybe that's a good start. Take responsibility and move forward and fix the mistakes. Make sure they don't happen again.
Oh, absolutely, good on you for doing that as well. I mean, a lot of people just like deflectors up. It wasn't me, kind of thing. It's refreshing that we get that from guys.
I also try not to get into like kind of explanations on Twitter. I've never actually seen one successfully work out for anybody. So, so for me, it's not a case of like avoiding the problem. I know what I did wrong, and going forward, make sure it doesn't happen again. It's one of the things I think Metal States is really good at is, I aim for that unattainable level of perfection, because nobody's ever going to get it perfectly right. But if you keep trying, you're going to fall and make mistakes and carry on trying again.
Yeah, the key to being good at anything is being self-critical and never settling. So, whatever it may be. So I applaud that approach. I think from the HLTV point of view, I mean, I'm pretty active with casting stuff that goes on HLTV. So
Yeah.
even I must tell you, like sometimes it's obscure because they've changed their policies quite a bit in the last year. Like a year ago, if I wanted to get something on there, I had to contact somebody in a Twitter DM. Like that's literally how formal
private.
it was. Or contact them on WhatsApp or Skype or whatever, depending on who it was and what the time zone was. It's like it's also different people. It's not the same guy. Now what they have is you register on the site and you link your channel to like an HLTV account, and then you can apply to have your streams up. But even that I find to be unreliable. So because I think again a person has to look at it. So if I look at it, I was speculating there. Maybe this is the reason. Maybe that's the reason. But honestly, I deal with them often, and I couldn't even tell you what the policies are because it's changed so much. So I don't really blame you guys in this. I would have probably assumed the same thing.
Well, I mean, I think the only good thing I could see coming out of that is, sure, maybe I didn't have 2,000 or 3,000 people watching the stream, which at the end of the day for South African esports, it doesn't. I mean, it's for a
fake
TO
numbers basically.
Well, for a TO to say, cool, we had 3,000 people watching our stream, a brand or a sponsor is going to say, cool, how many of those were South African? Because a 12. Brand is not going to worry about international because they've got their brands overseas spending budgets on esports. It's irrelevant as to, but we had like 500 people watching the stream, which is basically like pretty decent considering. We didn't do that much advertising other than within internally, like the Metal States internal channels and stuff like that. So, I mean, it just shows that there's potential, there's possible, people out there wanting to watch these games. I think because CS at the moment is so close with Goliath, Big Five, Sinister Five, and Energy, you see people saying, oh, well, this is not a Bravado walkover or Energy 2018 walkover kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's also just worth mentioning, you did at least tell people you were having a tournament. You did at least tell them, hey, here's a Twitch channel link. You managed to mention it more than 4 hours before it started, which I think is quite commendable. That takes a lot in South African tournament organizing.
Breaking the heat. All right.
Hey,
Sorry,
they can't hate me any more than they do already. So
let you get stuck there. Okay, so my totally unbiased opinion, right? I'm a big fan of FIFA ZA. The first event I worked for them was at VS Gaming last year at the massive festival. I was an admin guy there. This year, I got to work as a host and commentator for you guys at Rush for you guys FIFA event. I thought it was a spectacular event. Obviously, again, no bias, of course. And I think the FIFA community, from what I heard there and after, they really received it quite well. I know it was your guys' first FIFA tournament, but do you think you guys will be maybe getting more involved in the scene after such a stellar job was done, I think?
I can unequivocally say that we will most certainly be getting involved in FIFA. The amount of salt and toxicity in FIFA is just completely necessary for us to get involved. It's just the perfect esports. It goes along with Dota, Counter-Strike, all that. No, but I mean, beyond a shadow of a doubt, definitely getting involved in FIFA. There's some other big plans we've got, working on some stuff, and I'd really like to see. You'll start to see Metal State getting into a lot of different, more niche games to try and round everything off. And I'm going to be completely honest with you as a TO, I'm super, super concerned about Dota in South Africa. There is no benefit for me as a tournament organizer to host a Dota tournament. If I go to my website right now, WSG, this is an international qualifier, right? And we're talking after Lead Pro / White Rabbit Gaming team has now fallen off the they've done their own thing and they've gone. How many teams we had?
12,
14 teams sign up for Dota. 14 teams. Last year I had 39.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I mean, I think even if you look at VS Gaming, they had their recent, or they were supposed to have their recent event a week before their CS:GO, and they just cancelled it because like they had something like 3 or 4 teams sign up, and I was just like, well, this is not worth our time. 3. I mean, I think that says enough. It's like it's not like the TOs aren't putting in the effort. It's
They're
just
trying.
Like,
We're all
nobody's
trying.
signing up.
We're all trying. I'm sitting there going, how can I reach these people? What do I need to do to make people, you don't have to always play to be competitive. I've created, the idea of the Open Series and the Pro Series is to create that amateur/pro. If you want to go into the Pro Series, you can go into the Pro Series. If you want to stay in the Open Series, you can stay and just play with your mates and win a bit of cash. But it's like, do we just have that few gamers? I can't believe that's true.
The Dota scene suffers from a couple of things. That's ignoring the toxicity and all that shit aside. I think the precedent for Dota has been set for a multitude of years now, where Dota gets masters, right? It's a tournament that's like 500,000 rand prize pool at minimum. They have to play a league play the VS League for about a year, and then that's the stable sort of games they play, and then they eventually make it to masters, and that's their big shot where they make a lot of money. So for them, even for that, VS stopped paying for flights and accommodation and stuff. But again, it's 500,000 rand minimum prize pool, so people are willing to do that. That's the expectation they have. So it's kind of a case of like, oh, okay, so we have to play this another league now. Okay, it's not worth the effort. The prizes are not good. It's like, it's a level of entitlement they have because of getting the amount of the prize money and fame that Dota has had in the last couple of years, I think. So yeah, Dota community has a couple of issues. That's just one of them.
It's a little short-sighted though, Kaameel. What happens, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen, VS are doing a great job. They're doing their thing. They're bringing, they're doing their thing at Comic-Con, 500,000 rand. What happens if VS Gaming decide next year they're not going to do 500,000 rand in Dota? And I don't know anything. I don't know anything about what VS Gaming are doing. I'm just saying it's short-sighted to think that it'll be there next year. It's short-sighted to feel that, I didn't know Hearthstone was dropped from WSG until the absolute last minute. And like Hearthstone is quite big in South Africa.
Right.
We had like 60 people sign up for Hearthstone. But, it's like, how do you say that next year or this time next year, PUBG is going to be around still? What happens, it's, I don't know.
Could be like the H1Z1 Pro League, biggest game in the world for briefly, and then PUBG comes. They announce their Pro League, huge prize pool, everything, and then the whole game just like falls in on itself, and they can't pay the prizes because the company's just swirling the toilet.
Dude, I'm in Dota Underlords. I don't know Dota. Anybody that knows me knows I know this much about Dota. And I'm in Dota Underlords because I see there might be a potential for a possible league competition there. So that's what I'm doing half my life, is like just playing games and seeing how to run a league or a tournament, because you can't just rely on 2 games in South Africa, which is Counter-Strike and Dota. FIFA is a good example. I wanted with all my heart to do Call of Duty. We ran a league, 10,000 rand a month. By the end of the league, we had 8 teams of 59 left actually actively participating. I don't know how to justify that to a sponsor.
That's unbelievable.
These are the same motherfuckers who ask, yo, where's the tournaments, bro? I want to play tournaments. Where's the card tournaments?
But maybe Middle States is doing it wrong, right? Maybe they don't want a month-long league. Maybe they just want 3,000 rand like Shawnee's doing, which is great. And she's gone off her own back, and she's gone and found sponsors and or donated her own money, and that, and I think Brad and a couple of other guys, Jason and that. Maybe they just want a 1 weekend tournament. But like, if you're out there, I'm on Twitter. My website has like literally every functionality to contact Middle State. We've even got a little chat client now. Worst idea ever, but people talk to us to say like, listen, this is what we want. Talk to me. Kaameel, this weekend was a good example with FIFA. Guys, can we rather do a Swiss system that it'll work out better for everyone? cool. I mean, my developer was literally sitting in the FIFA area redeveloping the website so that it could cater for a Swiss system. We want to make it better for gamers, so tell us what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example, right? I was gonna say just that change. Like, I was also a bit skeptical. They're like, yo, can we go Swiss? I was like, man, the tournament's gonna start in like 30 minutes. Our next round's gonna start. But you guys made it happen, right? There was a couple of admin calls and rulings that you had to sort of resolve in that tournament in the Dota side, lots in the FIFA side. And I have to say, like, from my perspective, I think you did a phenomenal job as a sort of officiator to that, Barry. I think it was really impressive.
Well, I think that's one of the things that was really useful, was me not casting, hosting, being on a stage or something where I could actually just take teams aside, players aside, and actually consult or talk to them. Because and I said the same thing to Justin, the admin of FIFA, you know, you can't get into a fight with these guys because you've got the whole weekend with them. You've got to spend, you know, they've got to see you as someone that they can go to. But if some big bearded guy walks in there and goes, right, you come over here and this is what's going to happen, and that's the way it is, and then I walk off, everybody thinks I'm the arsehole, and, you know, but the problem's been resolved, right? And the admin, nobody hates the admin. He's just doing his job and what he's being told by that big hairy bastard that just walked out here.
How it's got to be. Somebody's got to be the bad guy. That's how you move things forward.
That's a phenomenal outlook of it. Being the bad guy, are we used to that now, Extremes?
Yeah, well, I mean, outside of esports, I'm also the boss, so I'm used to being the bad guy. You got to wield the big stick, otherwise, you're not going to make money. You're not going to succeed at what you're doing. You can't be nice all the time. We all want to be friends, but you know, in Barry's case, I mean, I used to cast with Barry, so I mean, I've been on all sides of tournaments with Barry, and he's, you know, from my perspective, Barry's a cool guy to hang around with. But the problem that comes in is, like, we're mates now, but Barry's also the boss of the broadcast. And if you have to think about doing the broadcast and not being the boss, that's a really, really difficult balance to strike. And I mean, I've cast with other guys who try to do the same thing, and it's very tough.
It's impossible, Mike. You know, the thing is if I see something that I want to change during a broadcast, I completely lose focus on the cast now. And I'm like, that needs to move. That needs to change, because I have a very high standard. I mean, most of us in esports do. And this is how we want to do things. And then I'm now focusing on a cable or an overlay that's wrong when I should not be casting. Just step aside, let someone else who's more than capable of casting, if not better. I mean, I am by no means a CSGO expert, but at the time it was a necessity for people like us to step in and become casters and, you know, try our hand at casting. And I mean, you guys have carried on, and there's no doubt that you guys are decent at what you do. But it's like, you know, you've got to just realize that it's like I'm now at a point in my life where I've missed the boat a little bit. So I'm not going to be a caster. I'm not going to be a pro player. As much as I played Battlefield professionally and won international tournaments, I missed my time to be on stage and like win massive trophies and, you know, that kind of stuff. Not that anybody's winning anything in Battlefield, but, you know, it's about kind of seeing where you're good, where you belong, and where it actually and it actually is for the benefits of everything that I'm not on stage.
That's a very mature approach to it, Barry. I think in a lot of guys' cases, they haven't necessarily, you know, taken on that sort of thinking, because again, it's very easy when you especially when you're emotionally invested in being involved with something. It's like you want to do everything. You want to just take on everything because, you know, I'm the guy. I'm good at what I do. I trust me. I don't
fix everything.
You know, it's very easy to do. I still do it, you know, in my other life in the audio industry. So, you know, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's very tough to let go of that sort of thing. But I mean, as we saw with the weekend's event, it ran really smoothly. Everything was cool. It didn't burn down, and you lived through it, even though your car got stolen. Somehow you held it together. Can you imagine if your car got stolen and you had to cast as well, Barry?
You know, there was a point where I lost my keys, and then I thought I actually need to go outside to see if my car's still there.
Yes.
But isn't
That
that how it
sinking
always
feeling.
works? So it's like you lose your keys and you're just like, okay, let me go
Shit.
check and see if my car's still there. It's like you haven't lost your
and
car,
like,
you just
you
lost
know,
your keys.
But that's the thing. At that point, I didn't know if I'd lost my keys or if I'd put them down and someone had picked them up and then walked into the parking lot and just pushed the unlock button. And my car lights up like the 4th of July when you push the unlock button. So it's like, hey, I'm over here, a free car for you. And like, as I walked out, I was just like, I stopped and I just stood and stared at my car and I'm like, okay. Then I told the security guard, don't you take your eyes off that car. But
I hope you have insurance on that thing.
I do. But like, I had angry people, dude. I had an angry locksmith who was obviously on date night because his girlfriend was in the front seats and he was out in the middle of Pretoria at like 10:30 at night, unlocking this guy's car. And then I had the nicest Afrikaans tow truck driver by the name of Bobby who was giving me vaping tips. And, like I had a very, very like eclectic like experience, kind of, with then the drunk VW guy who came to tell me. I waited 45 minutes for him to tell me he can't actually help me.
Oh, yeah.
So it was just an enjoyable experience. But the way that the tournament ran, and again, it didn't run perfectly. There were some things that weren't ideal. We had some PC issues. We had but the stream was good. The stream stayed on. We ran almost to schedule, and nobody left there unhappy.
I think almost to schedule is, as a tournament organizer, the best you can hope for, because esports
100%.
is unpredictable. It's always going to be this case of there should be no way that all 3 maps should go to overtime, but when you don't need it, they do. So it's,
and you can only put so many hours in, right, in a day, and when you've got 3 hours for CSGO, 2 hours for Hearthstone, 2 hours for StarCraft, 3 hours for Dota, and when you're running all of them on the same day, it just sometimes doesn't work out.
To go late, and then everything's delayed.
I can tell you, for any TO that's out there, the best, if you're doing more than one stage setup, like we did with a Dota, Counter-Strike, Hearthstone, and StarCraft, we had like a six set like table setup where the 2 guys were in front, and then the 5-man teams were behind them. So while we were running Hearthstone, the Counter-Strike guys kind of set up behind them, got all their stuff sorted out. So they literally had like an hour and a half on stage, so that any kind of problems that they had were resolved while I was going to say
other games going on,
sewing, but Hearthstone and StarCraft were happening. But no offense to Hearthstone guys, but and the same was true for when Counter-Strike was happening. The StarCraft and Hearthstone guys could go on stage as well.
Debbie's going to add you on Twitter.
It's kind of what you want. It's like a buffer that you sort out all your problems before it gets to like, okay, we're going live. Wait, my headphones are not working. It's like, why was this not solved half an hour ago?
Yeah, for sure.
It's that thing of just making sure that you have enough fail-safes built in, so that if anything goes wrong, it doesn't completely derail everything. Because what we often see is, in South African esports, budget is always tight, of course, but we tend to be in a situation where everything is reliant on it all going right, or everything falls apart, and inevitably something unravels and then just causes a sort of knock-on effect. So, I'm very in favor of what you guys are doing. I recall, consulting on some broadcasts, 2015, 2016, and the thing that always blew my mind coming from the professional audio industry is, so what backups do you guys have? Nothing. Maybe you should buy some. Well, we can't afford it. And I'm like, like OCD.
Well,
this cannot be, but this is where esports has been,
that's the thing, is like we had 2 spare machines. There's only so much backup you can have. We had 2 spare machines for the stage, and then we had like 3 backup headphones for casters. The only thing we didn't have was the Metal State setup is we have a caster machine with the production feed, and we had that at Rush as well. And then we had a problem with the observer machine, that when we touched the observer machine, the whole machine would freeze, literally. Like, it didn't matter if it was booting, but if you touched it, it would freeze. And it was like quite an interesting problem to figure out, because we didn't know why it would freeze, but because we didn't relate that touching the box would actually, so
causing a short.
Eventually we figured out the problem, but we were at a point where we were like, take the caster machine off the casting desk, let's use that as the observer machine. But thankfully Steigers was there, he pulled everything apart, put it back together, and we carried on.
I think with Metal State, I think as South African esports, the South African esports public, what we've come to expect is a good level of production across the board. You know when you tune into Metal State, no matter what the game is, that the level of what you're going to see is going to be pretty consistent across titles. It's going to, the audio is going to be decent. The stream will stay up. It's like the basics are there with you guys, and I know you guys have refined and added more overlays and gotten a little bit more technical as it's gone on. You got more camera views and things like that. But I think it's also just good to see that you guys have found kind of that baseline and you're just sort of refining off that. Whereas it almost feels to me like with a lot of other TOs, what happens is you have a broadcast, a whole new crew comes in, does this broadcast, it has all sorts of issues. And then the next time they do something, it's like, okay, well, square one again. It's a different production crew. Now they're trying to learn esports again. And the same things just sort of repeat themselves. I think for you guys, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just the consistency of personnel, the consistency of what you guys do. It kind of conspires to make sure that the quality is pretty uniform generally.
We've spent a lot of time on the production, and Mike, you helped us out right in the beginning when we were having sound issues and walking around in the studio at like 3:00 in the morning trying to find the buzz in the studio.
I remember that.
And it's like testing turning electric fences off outside, and it's the guys that have been involved with the production have spent a lot of time, and I've had guys come in and just even random phone calls, can we do production in Cape Town? I'm like, dude, you don't need my permission to do, production. Not that they're asking my permission, but it's like, it's not just as simple as like a normal linear broadcast where you just plug some cameras in and send a signal out. There's so many variables when you sit down with a sound guy that's like being brought in from outside and you tell him, right, I want that machine's sound to go here into my streaming machine, and I want it to go to front of house over the speakers, but I don't want that guy's sound to come in through the stream. Like they're like, just like,
why?
This seems so unnecessary. But there's so many like little things, little nuances in the broadcast that you kind of need to be prepared and understand. I mean, I never thought I would have to do a full technical diagram for a broadcast. And then Rush came, and I had to, with switches, breakouts, internet breakouts, and this is just for the broadcast. Now it's like, yeah, this is what I need. And then it makes it a lot easier, but it's like 3-4 years of doing this over and over again, rinse and repeat, to make sure that we kind of have that broadcast quality, and we make sure that we try the best that we can.
Yeah, I think it's impressive that you guys have been able to maintain that level of quality. So definitely props for that. If I look at, again, some of the other stuff, we had the VS event before, and I had the guys who did the production for that reach out to me and ask some questions on how to do things and that sort of thing. But it was just like, oh shit, we have a LAN, we better do something to make it work. And unfortunately, when you do that, it kind of shows in the broadcast that just it could be here, but it's here because the preparation isn't there. The guys are learning as they're going. Yeah, it's like anything.
Sorry, I think the most difficult thing, bud, is that like, one thing I've noticed in South Africa as well is like we're all trying to make esports work. We're all trying to do events. We have like 2 years ago we had one major event a year. Now we have 3 major events a year: Rush, Comic-Con, and Rage. And it's also like trying to convince a very new market why they should invest in esports and what there's to be gotten out of esports. So you spend a lot of time explaining to people about esports, what the benefits are, what they're going to get. They don't know half of the things, like you get out of an esports tournament or a league. They just know that they're going to give you X amounts of money, and they're thinking, well, I can just rather put that into a billboard or a radio ad or whatever, and I'll get the same amounts of people hearing my ad, regardless of whether they're actually hearing it or seeing it or not. But when a tournament comes up, it's you look at ESL and you're like, wow, I wish I had all that time. They they've got an event and they've planned it like 18 months in advance, and like ESL for next year's already been planned, and the difference in production is like completely insane. I would love that kind of time and that kind of budget to make player profile videos and go to the guy's house and like have the teams there for those professional photo shoots and then create all those sick overlays and all that content. But for now, we have to deal with everyday life and new markets in its infancy, other than just trying to deal with all the people in the industry trying to, find their own way in this esports world.
And there's those people like us who are trying to burn it down the whole time. So, I mean, there's also that. So,
I don't think anybody's, I think, and again, it was a conversation I had with Kaameel, is like, we need to talk more to one another in this industry. We need to realize that no matter how everybody thinks that we're like, we're not, none of us are the enemy. We all want the same thing. We all want the same thing. And at some points or another, you want to be famous by casting, not you, Mike, but you as a person want to be famous by casting CSGO or Dota or something. You want every TO to be working at the best of their capacity. VS Gaming want to run esports leagues and tournaments. That's fantastic. Metal State is, yes, I run tournaments and leagues and that, but I run them because I'm offering a broadcasting service. If you go and look at Metal State, we are a white label tournament organizer. So anybody can come to Metal State and completely pay to have it completely rebranded as their own tournament or league or whatever, and have the quality that we have on offer for anybody.
So Syntech Masters could be a
100%. I mean, it's done through our platform, but I mean, if anything that ESL does, it's done through their platform as well. It's easier. So the guys from Syntech want that exposure and that branding, and we push that purely Syntech. There's no Metal State branding on any of the posts for them. We do it from our account. They repost, and they don't have to worry about managing the players, managing the tournaments, setting up the league structures, anything like that. And that's how it should be. When you pay for a TV ad, the marketing director that signed it off isn't at the TV at the shoots, broad, like recording with the camera and holding the microphone and whatever it is. But he's the guy that gets the TV ad, looks and goes, okay, cool, take that off, put that in, cool, happy days, send it to the TV kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a very different mindset, and I think what you're mentioning there, that's going to become a factor in South African esports in coming years. It has to be, because there is going to be that delineation between who's a specialist esports broadcaster and who's just a TV broadcaster. Because, I mean, we know from some of the things that we've done in the past, you bring in TV guys, it's braille to them. I mean, it's hard for them to understand. 100%. It's such a different dynamic. And there are things that are the same, like a analyst desk is the same as a rugby broadcast, but I mean, you aren't sending cameras out onto a field. It's very, very different.
No, and to add to that, it's like you're running those cameras which are built and designed for 30 FPS. TV doesn't go higher than that, and then all of a sudden you're bringing in a 60 FPS computer feed, and you want to know what that does to a camera. I mean, just pulling it into a production, you start to get interlacing. I think people don't realize or understand the actual amount of variables in an esports production, and the fact that people can pull them off, sometimes I think to myself is like a miracle. You've got so many points of failure: observer machine, caster machine, streaming machine, sound engineers, sound headsets, PCs on the stage, monitors, lights, power. Anything that you can think of is a failure. When you record TV, you've got those things are recording to hard drives or in the camera straight off, and I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't points of failure there, but if one guy's machine isn't giving him 300 FPS, that tournament doesn't start, mate. He's playing for his competition to go overseas, his chance to go overseas, or 50,000 Rand. We are not starting until I get 300 FPS on this machine. It's not like you've got spare water coolers or extra RAM lying around. So you keep another machine around, which is 20,000-30,000 Rand, and you just hot swap that thing out, and you got to pray to God that's the only problem you have.
Yeah.
That like it's not like another one goes down, because then you don't have any more spares left.
and like you literally shit yourself when the players walk onto stage with drinks in their hands and stuff, and you're like, please God, just don't. I'm not going to stop them from drinking. The guys need to drink. They could be up there for 2 to 3 hours, but the last thing you need is a bottle of water, going all over something, and you're like, but just so many things.
Absolutely.
We're all just trying our hardest and our best.
I think, as you said, everybody in esports wants the same thing. It's just everybody has their own idea of how to do it, and fuck you if you disagree with me is often a lot of people's approach to it, which is a shame. I wish it was possible to talk openly with more guys. I mean, in our case, for instance, we've criticized VS a lot, invited them on. No. So it's just... It's unfortunate, because you'd kind of want to get the other side of the conversation out. And I mean, the other side of it also is, if a guy wants to come on here and tell us we're wrong and fuck all of us, he can do it. It's just,
I mean, for sure. If you're wrong, then, tell me why I'm wrong, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing I started this whole thing with.
Exactly. I think it's really valuable that you would come on the show. I mean, we had Dickie on a little while ago, Demonic, which is cool, but he ain't the boss. Having the boss is a different thing. So we're getting some cool information here about the production, and I think for a lot of people this will be quite eye opening, because I mean, for you and me, this is the normal sort of stuff we're involved in, but for other people, it's probably a side of it that they don't even think about, which I think is really cool to expose. Of course, I am a little bit focused on time, because we're having a nice conversation, and I like talking about broadcasting, and now we're actually running out of time. So let's move it on quickly. Kaameel, you had a couple things you wanted to touch on.
All right, so we saw, I think, Evo from Sin 5, the owner of Sin 5, kind of voice opinion that he's like, TOs are asking us to fly now. TOs are asking to get accommodation. TOs wanting us to play LANs. They're also asking us to buy tickets to these events now, right? So, and a couple of members of the community were like, yeah, I kind of see the expenses are getting high. Going to these LANs is like a big cost. We can't really, it's not feasible for us. We had the likes of XD pull out of WSG even. So I see the community's point of view now, that it's like really tough to make these LANs happen, right? To make it to these LANs rather. So I want to know from your perspective, from the Metal State perspective, you seeing this rush come up, you saying, okay, maybe this is a good opportunity for WESG. Like, what's your thinking about, like, what's the benefits of LANs, and like, what's the challenge of some of the LANs? Like, I think a good question that was asked was like, why do players have to buy tickets for the LANs? I don't know if you can elaborate a bit on that, Barry.
Okay, so there's a few things, and let me give you some historical information, right? The first LAN that Metal State ever did, everybody knows, the Samsung Galaxy CSGO Championship for R1 million. For us to fly out 16 teams for flights, accommodation, and food was 300,000 Rand.
Jeez.
300,000 Rand. The biggest problem that we have right now is that if I, as a tournament organizer, want to go to any brand out there and, say to them, let's pay for flights and accommodation. Cool. Let's see the numbers. And I've said this before when I chat to people. It's like, I host an event, right? So I go and I look at WESG, for example, CSGO with 23 teams. If I posted anything about WESG, do you think I got 23 likes? 23 retweets?
Probably not.
How do you tell a brand to pay for teams, for accommodation, for anything other than, and then on top of that you go, cool, how much are you going to invest? So if you look at what Vodacom, just on the prizes Vodacom gave away, cash and hardware and stuff, was about 200 grand.
Yeah.
Across Rush. I mean, then you got to look at the monitors that were provided. 16 monitors for FIFA, 8 monitors for Fortnite. There were 10 monitors for the WSG stage, 10 PCs on the, this stuff costs money. So where they can, they're trying to provide things like the hardware. So when you're flying a team out, it's they don't have to have the extra luggage with their PCs and their monitors and stuff. But it also gets hard, right? Because then it's a numbers game, right? I'd love to have 16 teams at a LAN, but then I need 20 machines so I can run two games at the same time. You know the whole
two separate
theory.
streams almost at times.
Exactly. Then you look at Rush, it's in its infancy, and they're trying to grow this expo and make it something quite special, so that I mean, at the end of the day, 5 players, I mean, how much the player passes with $200? 5 players, it's 1,000 rand. I know that there's all these costs that people are kind of incurring, but if you look internationally, the teams, those tournaments are getting kinds of money that we don't even know.
I mean, I think it's also just to butt in here. I think it's also sometimes like you do also like it's got to break somewhere. It's like, I mean, the players can't just pitch up and like expect the TOs and their teams to pay for everything. Like, sure, expecting the player to play like to pay for his his shirts, like we've heard previously, like paying to represent the team, I think is a bit too much. But like paying $200 to get into an event, I think is not that rough, especially considering that like how many. I mean, we were all part of that scene. Okay, maybe not Kaameel because he's like what 12.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I come into luxury, baby. I go to the middle stage studio.
That thing of like where you kind of you pay to go into a LAN. Like you're not going to win anything. You're literally just there to play with mates. But like you still do pay. Now again, I'm not saying like I expect a player to pay $500 to get into the LAN, but like 200 seems fairly reasonable. That like the team doesn't have to cop another grand on top of giving you like getting you to the event and paying for your accommodation stuff. Like somewhere it's got to break. Like the players don't just get everything for free, in my opinion. They shouldn't.
So you know what the thing is like if a Fallen retweets a post from ESL, a million people are getting that tweet, right?
Yeah.
In South Africa, I think the highest number any pro player, I think, is maybe Sonic or Black Poison with
and they're about 3K,
3,000 people. So was it Divo that what's his name? Devo, the guy from Sinister 5.
Oh, you mean Ivo? It's Vinev,
Ivo,
the owner, yes.
So Ivo made a post about this is getting expensive, but I mean I suppose I could pose a question to him: how many of his players have liked and retweeted a post to an event that he sent his team to? Because surely if you're gonna ask that question, then there needs to be some kind of reciprocal question, in the sense that those sponsors and those guys need to see value. So if they're getting 100 to 200 people liking and retweeting a post, I mean, it's not difficult. I've got 100, 200 likes on a tweet. It's if people, and people like those tweets. It's like if we're going to see esports work, we all need to work together. Everybody likes those, but it's like, cool. So the CSGO final is happening. Come and watch, blah, blah, blah. 5, 6, 7 likes.
Yeah.
It's like, you've got to justify the spend, right? So here's a stage, an amazing stage. Here's some money, and you can win a trip overseas for 5.5 million. I think if you come like 16th, you get like, if I'm not mistaken, like $8,000 or $12,000.
Is this what is this
WSG?
At the finals.
If you get out of groups, you already get like $12,000,
which is 160,000 rand, right? 170,000 rand.
Yeah, little chip off the old 1,000 rand tickets that you spent. But I mean, obviously the teams need to get there. But if I go back at the end of the day, or Rush goes back and says, "Cool guys, we got 200 likes per tweet that we did for the WSG stage," Vodacom can't say, they're going to go and look at that and go, shit, we need to get behind this. We need to put a bit more money in next year. And, these guys, these players are bringing us views, and they're bringing us impressions. And that's the ecosystem, and people aren't seeing it. Is like, they need to kind of get involved. We don't need guys in Dota trying to fucking smash guys off. Yes, they're it's bullshit. The racism is unacceptable, but it stopped being a racist thing and started becoming personal vendettas after a while when
That's why we stopped
this one
talking about
was
it.
doing that one. And what does that do? That completely destroys the scene. The scene, I don't want to touch as a TO. I don't want to have a brand associated with my company where there's players that are completely racist in a country like South Africa. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. So it's like, how do you quantify what's it worth? So Vodacom have, for an example, put down R500,000. That stage was much more. All of the money that I'm just using an example. They've given you an opportunity to play on stage, your team, to go and compete overseas, and they've put up R500,000 for that. And you're saying, yeah, it's really costing me a lot of money to send these guys, to Johannesburg, like 10,000-15,000 rand. And I know like people don't have that kind of money. I don't have 15,000 rand just to, but at the end of the day, we're all responsible for our own choices, right? You chose to become an MGO owner and you decided to pick up a CSGO and a Dota team. There's a certain amount of responsibility that goes with that. You want to send teams and create a brand called Sinister 5 or Energy or Bravado. I can tell you now, Andreas, Kaz, all of those guys, they're all spending money. And Metal State, I'm spending money on shit that I shouldn't be spending money on for tournaments. When I set up a machine and I don't have enough DisplayPort cables and I need to go and buy DisplayPort cables and, all these things that you don't budget for, but it's just part and parcel of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think
That's a fair take, right?
I think on that there's two sort of ways of looking at it. I mean, if you look at it in that sort of mindset of what was esports a few years ago and what is it now, where Kaameel was mentioning the expectations the Dota guys have, that's also there for the CS guys, probably even more so, just because they've had a lot more competitions. They've had they had the Samsung Galaxy, they had 2 seasons of ESL Africa, they've had how many seasons now of Masters. So it's this big money mindset where you feel, well, they got to look after us, we're the stars kind of thing. And yeah, maybe in a perfect world, maybe in Europe you would be a star, but unfortunately in South Africa the rest of everything hasn't caught up to those prize pools. So as you say, I mean, the casters in South Africa have more of a following than the players, generally speaking, which seems a little odd to me, because internationally it's the other way around. It's just, again, what the players do to involve themselves probably isn't enough. If I look at myself, in 2015, played at DGC, finished 7th, got nothing. So a whole year of work, nothing. But I mean, if I'd done it a year later, I would have gotten 30 grand, So it's like that's how quickly it's gone from, amateur to, suddenly all this money being thrown at it, and it's completely changed the way people are thinking about it.
It's definitely grown, but it's not international standard as much as it's growing here.
Well, it's grown and it's popped, right?
For sure, exactly. But I mean, it has to break before it can rebuild into the way that it needs to be rebuilt. But it's a growing phase. We need to understand that there's going to be times where there's going to be a cost. There's going to be a cost, and maybe Middle State did it wrong by paying for flights and accommodation and giving away 1 million rand. And
how dare you?
But I mean, that for me was a way of like, that's the standard. That's what it is overseas, internationally. But we have to get there, because if we're gonna make esports better, because there's this illusion that esports is exploding in South Africa. I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched Nights at the Museum, right? Where they're charging and there's this battle scene, and it's Owen Wilson. Is it Owen Wilson, the Roman and the cowboy, and you think it's this huge epic battle, and the camera zooms out, and it's just this quiet piece of grass. You can't. It's like that's how it's exploding. Esports is exploding in the grass. We're the ants, and we're screaming, and then everybody's looking from the outside, and they hear crickets because we're not making any noise. We're not retweeting. We're not getting viral on the right things. We're getting viral on the wrong things. Yeah. If you look up esports, you're going to find all the shit things about esports in South Africa, because that's what everybody wants to talk about. They don't want to talk about the good things. They don't want to say, like, how do we make this better? You know what, Middle State, fucking great job. But, let's do this, and this next time. You know what, Esports Central Podcast, you guys are a bunch of wankers, but how about this, this, and this? Take up the opportunity to try and look at making it better.
Agreed.
Yep.
I think that's a really good way to look at it. The second point I was going to make about the players paying to get and / the MGOs paying to get to tournaments. I think part of the issue in isolation, I think absolutely cool the way it was for Rush. But in the greater context, you have VS Gaming coming with the Dota 2 tournament that eventually got cancelled, but guys would have been planning to attend that. Then they had a CSGO LAN the weekend after. Then we have Rush and a KChicktay Fest on the same day. So, in the case of somebody like White Rabbit Gaming, they're sending players to both tournaments. Then the next weekend, another VS Gaming tournament in CSGO, and I believe there's another Dota one coming up as well.
Yeah,
so
coming up later in July.
It's just, it seems to... We have this whole year, and everything is just clustered in this full space, which I can see for an MGO why they would make them go,
it's completely understandable.
I have to spend all my budget, and I also, how sponsors are. When you pitch to sponsors, you tell them at the beginning of the year, this is what I'm going to need, and then these guys come and tell you, wait, it's all of this. Now, Rush is something that's well established, so if you're an MGO, Rush is coming because it's NAG. They're going to run it again, but these other things, I have to be critical of it because, well, why stack it like this? Imagine you're an MGO and you do CSGO and you attend the first VS CSGO thing and attend Rush and then you didn't qualify the first time around, so you go to the next one and all your players are from Cape Town. So what are you doing? Keeping them in Joburg for 3 weeks? I mean, it's just crazy.
But that's exactly it. It's like, at some point, you look at all these. There's CSGO on internationally every second weekend, Mike.
Every weekend,
if not every weekend, right? That Fnatic, SK, FaZe, they're not all at every single event.
Mm.
Maybe it also comes to a point where it's like you need to choose what you're going to.
I agree.
Pick what you want. What's important? And if it's not important, XD decided they didn't want to win WSG. Funnily enough, the team that replaced them ended up winning it and qualifying for WSG. And everything works out the way it needs to because, this was said, the best team needs to go. No matter who they are, how they were put together, if they're going to win and they win every single game, that's all that matters.
No, totally agree. Can I ask, like with... the VS stuff that came up, was this something that, like, between yourselves as tournament organizers, did they come to you at any point and say, hey, we're doing these events? Did you tell them you were doing Rush?
Yeah, Rob and I talk all the time, man. I know exactly when he's doing his stuff and he knows when I'm doing my stuff, and we make sure that we are not trying to step on each other's toes. We have a very good relationship, and we don't want to try and make it difficult for people not to be able to attend events.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate it has worked out the way it has. I think it's...
Yeah, the timing is always going to be difficult. I think what threw a big spanner in the works was that really sudden announcement from StarLadder.
Mm-hmm.
That literally came out of nowhere, and those qualifiers were like I know
the next week or something.
They were on some of those were on the dates that VS Gaming were planning on having some of their events.
Okay, well that makes a hell of a lot more sense. So that's actually good information. Thanks for that. I mean, of course, I'm trying to play devil's advocate for these guys because they're also going to, on Twitter. So, sometimes that's required to get to ask on something like a podcast. Here's the amazing thing, just for, I'll break the fourth wall for you guys. We don't always actually say what we think. Sometimes we just say things so that another viewpoint comes through. It's I know it's mind blowing, but that's actually what you have to do. Otherwise, we just agree with each other, and then there might as well be one of us. So,
I mean, I agree with that. And what happens if someone went onto Twitter and said, "Hey guys, I noticed you've got your dates, really close to one another. What has happened?" Sometimes a little bit of gentleness gets you a long way. If you open the door, there's a different way of asking a question, right? And I think people are, they're already sensitive on Twitter, and tone is lost in translation over text and stuff like that. But if you're clear and concise and you ask the right people the right questions, you'll get the answers you want.
Absolutely. We're actually heading on for an hour on this, so I don't know if shall we clack with the.
If you have any if you have any questions, I'll answer them as short and as briefly as possible. Because
I
I
think
know
the
I've kind
last
of waffled.
question is probably the longest one. So I don't know. Actually,
Alright.
should I go for it or should we cut it?
Do it. Let's go. Then you can
All right.
decide to cut it if you
All right,
want.
this is a good one. Okay, all right. It's actually a very touchy subject. So in the context of the South African esports scene, I believe it's an important one though. And this topic is conflict of interest. In this case, in casting, right? Having the likes of Gulls and Lighters casting an event where both have vested interest in teams. Like I want to know the sort of thinking behind it. But before you answer, I just want to preface by saying this. I don't have anything against Gulls or Lighters. In fact, I think they bring a great flavor to the scene. And I think like I've always been a guy pushing for players to cast with me. I've casted the multiple different players in my time in Dota 2 casting, and my main co-caster was an ex-pro player. So I like players casting. But also at the same time, you have to kind of gauge whether is this okay or is it not okay, and why is it or isn't it, or just what's the feeling on it. And I'll say even add this, that I also know what it's like to having cast with the vested interest, because I had a brother who's been he just won the WSG qualifying, he's going to China now. If I was casting that, I would have been over the moon if I was casting. If he won, then if I lost, how would I have reacted? You know, you have to kind of gauge, am I the best person to be casting that game? So as an ask you, Barry, or all of us, we all casters here. What is the thoughts on the quote unquote conflict of interest?
Well, if you look at international casters, Yanko had a very strong connection to FaZe, if I'm not mistaken. Tommy, strong connection to SK. I mean, everybody has a connection somewhere. I have a Bravado tattoo on my arm, and every time somebody sees me, I have to explain, what it means. But the point is we want ex-gamers to cast in the scene because they have knowledge, they have understanding
Right.
about what it's like to be on stage, what the kind of pressure is. If you look at any sport, ex-commentators, they're rugby particularly, you look at those guys. I know Joel Stransky, there's a whole bunch of guys that are commentating. Cricket's Shaun Pollock, Graham Smith, they're all commentators, ex-players. But I honestly don't see any conflict. Sure, Ashton and Lights and Tools own or part owners or management of Goliath Gaming and Big Five. The hardest thing for me to cast the game when Bravado was playing, there's no secret, I supported Bravado when they were in Counter-Strike and any game actually, was, I think my camera's gone out of focus, was because watching or casting a game that Bravado were losing. It was more difficult for me to try and remain unbiased in my casting as possible. And I was very aware of it, very aware. So now we're at a stage where we don't have a big industry. We don't have a huge pool of experts casters that are ex-pro players. We're still all these young guys. I mean, you look at us, we've all been casting for 3, 4, 5 years, and everybody will still look at us and say, you're not pro players, you can't, you shouldn't be casting. There's all that typical stuff, right? So it's like, if they want to cast, let them. I don't have that rule. I know VS Gaming has some kind of some rule in their rule set but the backstory to that is that was put in there because there was actually a caster that was casting for a team so that they could hear him. There was an issue. There was a whole incident around that back in the day where,
it was a Dota game or something.
Yes, it was a Dota game, exactly. And he was actually kind of prompting his team. I don't know the teams or anything like that, but he's actually prompting the team as to what was happening. So for me, it's like, we have other things. We have other bigger issues to worry about. Guys on stage, they can hear still. We need to get soundproof headsets that are 15,000 Rand. If you want a decent...
I solved that 3 years ago, bro, but nobody's got the money for
problem...
it, eh?
Yeah, exactly. the money is a problem. It's like, should I spend that money on soundproof headsets or put that in a prize pool? The question's going to answer itself. Yeah. So it's like, as much as Lighters and Goals, but Snare has his own people and players that he enjoys. Kaameel, you have your own personal preference on players. I remember the first time you were casting in the studio, you said to me, how was it? And I said, I didn't even know your brother was playing. I said, did you have anyone in that? I think it was he was playing for White Rabbit at one point. I can't remember. Or APG.
5, maybe that tournament.
I can't remember, and you remember what I said to you is just try to keep the emotions in check, because what ends up happening is not as a caster where you get sad, you actually get angry at the team. You get angry, and
Be better, damn it.
And I thought Lighters and Goals were really good at holding composure. You know, Lighters had to watch his team get beaten by Ashton's team. And then later on, Ashton had to watch his team lose. And, you know, I spoke to them both afterwards. They were obviously disappointed, but there was no bad feelings. And I think they just did a really good professional job.
I'd say watching it didn't come across as biased. The only point I ever felt was maybe in the last sort of 2-3 rounds when, kind of Talani was sort of solo casting, because it was really very apparent it was over now for Goliath Gaming.
But I've been guilty of that. I think if you've got a vested interest into something, it's hard, but it doesn't mean that we have the luxury of just saying, okay, let's put someone else. We had 3 CSGO games. It was pointless for me to bring in another caster to kind of like, in case Goliath are playing or in case Big Five are playing, like have a different caster. And it's it is what it is. Let the guys cast, and until they've actually done something that is like sinister, there's no reason why we should try and change the formula at this point. 2 years time, we could have another 2 casters. Maybe Zero Chance decides he's going to throw his ring, his hats in the ring, and
how to make everybody on stream angry, right?
Or Detrony or Elusive, one of those guys comes and casts, or who knows. But as a community in esports, we need to start being a little bit more accepting and understanding that we're still a very, very small industry, and we need to allow more people in to grow.
I think where it's different maybe to international broadcasters, what you'll tend to find is it's an ex-player with a with the play-by-play or something like that. So that's why you'd have like Sadicus and Henry G, who was obviously an ex-player, that Moses and Anders kind of thing. So that's kind of the thing that I think Counter-Strike fans are used to. So it is kind of unique that it is 2 sort of fairly current players who are casting together. That's probably what is quite different to what guys would be expecting. But yeah, as you say, sorry, you go for it.
Sorry, to add to that, though, it's like they both really have a good synergy. They've been friends for a long time. They've played in the same team.
For sure, yeah.
They've played in opposing teams against each other on stage. And the fact of the matter is that they do have a good synergy.
Yeah, I think they're a phenomenal duo. You can see the love they get into it. If you can watch them on stream, they're hilarious. They make good jokes. As I said, they have their own unique flavor. It's good to watch.
I can tell you, any other, if I need casters, they'll be there for Middle State. Sorry, I've got a lot of action happening behind me here, but
that's okay.
If I have the capacity to have more casters, Shaun will be there. And Shaun knows I have a soft spot for him. He's one of my favorites. Don't you fucking raise your eyebrow at me, man.
I didn't raise my eyebrows. Fuck.
Yes. But the point is like we all get on, Mike. I mean, you'd also work with. I don't have any qualms with anyone. If I need casters,
fuck you, Barry. No, sorry.
Anybody. And the thing is if you want to cast, why don't you send me and not excluding present company, but there's so many people out there that'll have something to say about casters. Well, send me your demo. Let's see if you can do it, and then I'll put you on stage in front of a camera and see how well you do then.
Yeah, it happened for ISO. So, I mean, you can look at that directly as like, hey, send us videos. We pick the best guy. The guy ends up on stage. That is what happened. I think in South African casting, just as an aside, it's generally, it goes in stages. There's guys who'll work hard for a while. They'll kind of go and do something else for a bit. Another couple guys will work really hard. And you'll tend to have guys cycling in like that, because it's very difficult for guys to just cast and grind all the time for the whole year. So you'll tend to see it go in cycles like this. So I mean, as you say, another event down the track, it might be Prof and GMAX together again, or you might be involved or whatever the case is.
Hayes is another one. I won't cast again. Not unless somebody like specifically says Anthrax, like one of those like exhibition Anthrax and GMAX or Anthrax and whatever. But like Hayes as well, another great caster. It's just been so difficult to. We haven't had a lot of. This was our first LAN, and Ash and Lighters specifically said, please, anything next, please. We would really love to cast. And I said, cool. This was before I mean, we all know they weren't the first choice for VS Gaming's event the week before. So, whoever gets it on the day gets it. I've been excluded from many casts and hosting gigs, and it's just business.
Oh,
At the end of the
absolutely.
day, it's just business.
Thank you for not hiring me, by the way. I'm sincere in that, because I just finished 72 maps over 6 weeks for freaking ESL. So I was like, fuck that. I'm not casting anymore for the next few weeks.
Dude, I just, for me, it was like, who can we get to cast? And like, it was just like anybody, everything, because Fortnite was our hardest thing to find. And Gareth Woods ended up helping us out there. But it's like, it was just, like I say, Ashen Lights has asked, and I was like, happy to oblige. And I thought they brought a nice, different, spin on it, lots of insight into the game. They know who everybody is and how they're playing, and they've got a lot of background, which is beneficial to them.
I think it brings a level of background information that typically isn't there with casters, because as I say again, most casters cycle in and out, so they don't watch everything, they're not involved in everything, so you'll tend to have sort of gaps in the knowledge, whereas they've been involved in the scene pretty much for the last 10 years, so they can talk about what happened at Rage in 2013 and that sort of thing, which is cool. So I, like as Kaameel said, I think having ex-players on is really cool. I mean, personally, I think the vested financial interests, like if we were big international scene, that would be a huge issue. But
I think it might be, yes.
But in this case, it's an issue. But as long as they do it as they've been doing it, and they take the feedback from guys like you and kind of keeping it baseline, it's probably okay.
And again, I don't disagree. Like, if I think it adds a bit of spice, if you had to put me with either of those guys as a cast, I think it would still be a great cast, because I'd be asking questions and talking about things that the average person would be asking, that maybe them as ex-players aren't thinking about. But they're both brilliant casters. They're an amazing dynamic duo of casters, and I mean, if you put anyone with either of them, they would also end up being a great casting pair as well.
Probably, and I think they're just going to get better and better as they keep working at it, which is always the thing, So, I think topic closed, I'd say, because we told you we'd take probably an hour of your time, and now we've gone over that. So, I think we'll call it a day. So, thank you for being on the show, Barry. Really appreciate you being on the Esports Central podcast. Thanks for everybody for watching the show. Definitely catch the next episode, episode number 50, the big anniversary in which Sargon will take off his pants on camera.
I'll be watching.
That's definitely not happening. But this has been Esports Central, the Esports Central Podcast, episode 49. I need more coffee, by the way. Go over and check us out on www.esportscentral.co.za and on Facebook and Twitter and every platform that matters. We're on Spotify and iTunes and all the amazing things, YouTube, wherever Esports Central exists, and there exists Salt as well. So do join us for the next episode 50. Have yourselves a fantastic week. Take care, guys. Cheers.
Thanks very much.